Good evening, everyone. With the posted time having arrived and a quorum of members present, I'll call the Finance Committee meeting for Wednesday, October 21st, 2020 to order. We have one item of business on our agenda this week for our workshops, and that's 2021 budget deliberations and recommendation to the Common Council. So today is workshop number 3 of 4, and we'll pick up kind of where we left off last night. We had asked Mary Ann to include a number of things and then project our mill rate impact. Just to recap, the things that we had added as supplemental requests yesterday was an additional step toward the fulfillment of option 3 of the wage study. That added $14,843. We approved the mental health evaluation for the police department for $10,000. Motor pool contracted mechanical services for $120,000. That's to be funded by motor pool and not off of the levy. Special event staffing, we funded half of that request at $60,000, and we've deferred $75,000 to a future year. That does add 2 cents to the mill rate. Physical therapy and athletic training program to continue for the police department at $25,000. And so then let me just see here. We had deferred one FTE property appraiser requested in the assessment department. I think we need a little further dialogue about that because last night we couldn't hear the assessor when he was talking to us on WebEx. We approved two-way radios for the Public Works Department to be paid from motor pool and not the levy for $30,000. We approved going to a We approved partial funding for the social media videographer. We did not add that person at full time, but we've recommended funding that position at $26,535. And then the other items that we've deferred, we deferred the additional street maintainer in Public Works. We deferred the recreation supervisor in Parks, and we've deferred the preservation coordinator in Public Works. And we have found an alternative, or hopefully an alternative fund source for the recreation plan for parks, whereby we would use our 2020 budget savings at the end of the year to encumber some of that to fund that 5-year plan, since it makes us eligible for some aids and grants. If we don't have that plan, we don't qualify for some of those programs. And so then the net impact, if we add that all up, is just under 5 cents on the mill rate. About 4.8 cents out of the things that we funded that are levy funded. And I guess, Mary Ann, if you wanted to walk us through the rest of it. We've got, we also have a list on your desks here of the modifications that we've made for the 2021 budget publication, which includes all the things we've added.
Yes, so it includes the things that you outlined, as well as we discussed last night, putting the mall project in the publication. So in tax increment district number 12, we would add the street improvements of $1.2 million, the developer grant of $3.5 million, and the proceeds from notes of $4.7, and then we would deduct out of tax increment district number 8 the second payment to WAS based on the original developer agreement, so that subtracted $335,000. So these are the proposed changes that we would make from the budget book for the budget publication.
Okay. And I guess just to catch up anybody who missed yesterday's workshop, the reason that we have included that is because when we present the budget for public hearing and we ask the public to react to the 2021 budget and all of its anticipated potential expenses, we want them to be able to react to a complete picture of what 2021 may look like, assuming that projects get approved and move forward. That said, if we were to complete the entire budget process without that item, the committee agreed that it is a bit disingenuous to not disclose that and then go back to try and add it after the fact, after people have already offered their feedback on what they thought was a complete budget. So that's where we're at. I mean, obviously bringing that forward in the budget is not to be taken as final project approval for that project, and it also approves no spending. So that is just putting a indicator in there that that project may move forward, but it certainly has not yet, and there's no development agreement yet created. So Anything else that you wanted to walk us through, Mary Ann, before we?
Sure, just a couple other things. As I believe you got an email from Rick Rubo, our city assessor, regarding his supplemental request, and I think a request of opportunity to speak. And then
Yep.
Late this afternoon, I got a request from the Parks Director. And, when we did our tax increment District Number 8 project plan amendment this year, meaning, that was in 2020, we added, if you recall, we added UWSP Marathon Campus and Marathon Park and the old, or the existing highway department in there, because we said, that we knew that the county had some rehabilitation or some plans to upgrade those facilities. And the county would like to do a master plan for that area at a total cost of $80,000. The county has in their 2021 CIP $50,000 for that plan, and they were asking if the city would contribute $30,000. And this would be an eligible project cost of tax increment District Number 8. So Jamie is asking if we could consider that before we conclude our 2021 budget work. And then the other thing that was included in your packet is, I don't know how I did this, but you have last year's narrative for the city attorney's office in the budget book. I've already updated the online, the PDF that's online, and then I've included the corrected page for you.
okay.
And we'll print a adopted budget book too.
Okay.
And we will get that corrected in that book and get everybody a hard copy of that adopted budget. So,
Excellent. And I guess with regard to the West Side Master Plan, the fact that it does take into account economic development opportunities surrounding that area, I think that's something that we certainly should talk through. Obviously, we don't own Marathon Park. We now apparently don't manage Marathon Park. So in terms of development there, we may not have a dog in that fight. I mean, in terms of planning, though, for the area that surrounds the UWSP Wausau campus, that's clearly in the city, how that relates to a park plan, I guess I would like to know a little more about, and really where the city falls in that, because both of those facilities are county facilities. Is Jamie on?
yes.
Jamie, can you walk us through the vision a little bit that county has for this?
Yes, thank you. And I apologize I didn't get this in right away. I had talked to Christian about it when he was still here months ago, and then I spaced it. I did take it to the county. So the overall idea that it's a West Side Master Plan and includes Marathon Park and the campus are two county components. And then the other part is all of West Street and even Party Street with the plan that the county is moving our Parks Department and Highway and Emergency Management all off of those roads and having those available for future redevelopment, whether it's housing or businesses. But the idea that it all goes together is, Marathon Park is the same way it's been for many, many, many years. And the vision that our past county administrator had and our current county administrator is that we can better utilize that facility in that park, maybe redesign it a bit so that the road doesn't go right through the middle and that it can be used and developed with maybe some facilities that draw in more visitors to the area. But, we have facilities that are aged in there. We need to look at what that means to build nicer, newer facilities potentially, and that would be part of that tourism dollar, whether we get that, campground out of there. So it's really looking at how the park can benefit the region and be more usable, but also bring in tourist guests, revenue, while also keeping the fair in mind, because the fair has been there and it's part of the reason why the county has the park. Originally, it was just Marathon Park and the West Street area to talk about how those could tie together. There's a potential that depending upon what's put on West Street, if it's hotels or whatever, maybe there is the option that a skywalk needs to be put in over the railroad tracks or something under the railroad tracks to tie people into whatever venue we might put there. UWSP got put into that discussion when the discussion came about with the dorms and whether or not to redevelop those into apartments. But I think the future of UWSP and that campus, along with how it ties into that entire area and how it's used for businesses, for residents, for visitors, all kind of goes hand in hand. And so when I mentioned this with the community development director, and we were talking about it a while ago, he really had mentioned that it's a great partnership. That's why the county, when we look at the budget, and we did 80,000, and the 50 is right now in the current plans for the county. They did approve it right now, and the county budget hasn't been officially approved, but it is in there for 50, asking for 30 from the city, basically for the third of it, which is the West Street side, and how that economic development piece and redevelopment would tie in with the vision of the businesses and the residents of the city as well. So that's kind of how the vision and how it would all go together. Does that answer that?
Do we know if any of the plan process would include any analysis of potential pollution on the West Street site? I mean, that site has been the highway shop for a long time. And, if there's some environmental concern associated with that site, or the adjacent rail bed, I think we'd want to know that before we start planning for development, especially if we start talking about either housing or hotels. And, I struggle with this one a little bit because the university and the buildings and the Marathon Park are really kind of the county's baby. And so I know, or I truly believe, after my experiences, that if the shoe was on the other foot and we were making this request of them in the same proportions, I can pretty much estimate what the answer would be. So, if we would decide to partner on this, I hope that it would be recognized as a positive step towards a better partnership between city and county, because historically that's not existed. And we've had some difficulty where, when we've gone to them to help with similar things, including revisioning Wausau Center that they get property and sales tax out of, the answer was an emphatic no. So I guess this is a tough one. Committee, what do you think?
If I could add too, I do think the vision of our new administrator, the administrations have changed and mayors new, the administrators new. I think there is a bigger vision there. And even though the county does own the park and the university, I mean, that park is a staple of the city, and we take pride in that, and we want to make it so that it makes the city better. Just because it's a county piece of property in the middle of the city, it really it kind of defines the city in a way, and if we can make it even bigger and better, it will benefit that as well. I think there's different leadership, so I think from my perspective, the vision and the ability or the willingness to cooperate has changed.
Okay. Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I guess, what Jamie just said. I'm committed to making that relationship better so that we can work together and do what's best for our shared constituents instead of kind of have this, siloed approach. So whatever you need, if there's something you're not getting from the county, I'm willing to call up Lance and say, hey, let's do this. So
There's been a defined we and they type approach for decades, and so hopefully that does improve. Committee, what is your thought on adding this supplemental item? I mean, this is paid for from the Community Development Fund, so this would not affect your levy and your mill rate. Mike, do you have thoughts?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking, because, Marathon Park was originally deeded over to the county by the Agricultural Society, and the Agricultural Society has control of the park during the fair. Shouldn't the Ag Society have some kind of stake or interest in this master plan? Since the buildings, I don't know if all of those buildings are county buildings or if they're Ag Society buildings or what, so.
Good point. Jamie, do you know?
Yes, it's a unique relationship, but no, the county owns the property, it owns the park at all times, even during the fair. We did find that out. The Agricultural Society only has the ability, per the agreement that when they donated the land 100 years ago to the city or to the county, that they have the ability to run fairs out of that facility when they want to. But they do not revert, ownership does not revert to them during the fair as once we thought. We've dug into that. So it is a county property with county facilities that the fair does get to use. And to Mike's point, yes, they will have a stake in this. Definitely they will be at the table when we talk about the long-term look of the park. And there are some historical buildings in there that we cannot touch and we will preserve. That's part of what the park will be. But hopefully we can work around that whole plan and make a really good plan on how those historic buildings and the fair fit within the future of it.
Can that plan include at least a Phase 1 analysis of the highway shop site?
Yes.
Okay.
And just for clarification, I think our plan, it says community development funds, but it would come out of tax increment District 8.
Oh, to date, okay.
Yeah.
Let me make a different note here. Okay, so 30,000 then from to date,
Yeah.
and to date has the increment to cover that?
Yes.
correct? Okay,
Good.
go ahead, Mike.
When does to date expire?
And I want to say 39, maybe?
Okay.
It's pretty new.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
got plenty of time.
Okay. Committee members, anyone else have thoughts?
That's right, 39.
Do you feel like you want to include this in and see where we come out? I mean, we'll obviously be tallying up the things that we've added and removed, and then we'll head toward a more final product in our workshop tomorrow. Should we include this in? Dawn says yes, Mike says yes. I'll agree as well.
say yes.
Okay, yep, perfect, and Sarah as well. So, yeah, we'll agree by consensus that we'll include that item in our projections then.
Thank you.
And then also, we wanted to revisit our deferral on the FTE for the assessment department. I think earlier today, you all received an email from Rick Rubo. He was trying to explain to us last night, but we couldn't hear him. So he is with us tonight. He's going to come up and talk about the position a little bit. An important point that was revealed in his email is that he does believe that with the additional taxable value that will be discovered by the folks, or by the person that occupies this position, it may offset a substantial amount of the salary. So that's important to us. I mean, we did not know that last night, so welcome, Rick.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I did send out that email this afternoon because I wasn't quite sure I would have an opportunity to speak in front of you guys in regards to that position that I'm requesting. I just wanted to reiterate that, the assessment office is the department that established the value for the city of Wausau. We are the ones that report these values to the Department of Revenue. We report the new construction to the Department of Revenue, and ultimately, it's what affects the budget. It's what Mary Ann uses to develop what is the mill rate going to be. What we have found then, since the department had lost due to downsizing in 16, the market itself has picked up. There is about 24% more work than existed since 2013 when we had a staff of 7. So what's happening is that when staff goes out and reviews property, they're coming back and we find that there's a lot of new construction going on in these homes. The new construction that is not picked up in the assessment or in any reporting. And the reason why that is because we don't have the staff right now to do old inspection reviews. Typically, when we had a staff of 7, the appraisers had the city divided into 4s. And it's a smaller part of what they owned or took ownership of, and then it allowed them to have more time to do these old inspections, to focus on a certain neighborhood, certain school district, and to ask to go view these properties that have not been inspected in the past 15 to 35 years. Now, we all know, majority of the people that have a home do work and and unfortunately, they do work without permits. And it is that value that we end up finding when the property sells. So then we turn around and go, oh, wow, our assessment was $90,000, it sold for $120,000, but all these things were done to that property. And it explains why it sold for more than our assessed value. So once we add all those things in and say the assessment goes to 115, we know that $5,000 is really market value because of how we do modeling valuation. So all this $15,000 is new construction that needs to be picked up and reported. So with this extra position, it allows staff to have that opportunity to do these older inspections that we don't have the time right now to do. Another thing is I wanted to point out, I mean, we have all these other projects that come down the line in the assessment cycle. And one example I want to give is when the personal property exemption of machinery, tools, and patterns happened in 2017. The city of Wausau lost $28 million worth of tax base from personal property. That the state of Wisconsin in itself said that they're going to make you whole, right? Well, majority of the municipalities and the assessors didn't do anything other than report that information and took what that personal property blotter, which is a self-reporting form, and did the valuations. We, on the other hand, audited every single personal property account. And what we found over doing this audit for 2 years in a row, we added $18 million back to the tax base that would have just been disappeared. If I just followed the statute of my job of what was the minimum to be required, I would have said, yep, it's all exempt. But when we did the audits and went behind and we found that there's assets that did not meet that exemption, there's racking that was inside these, they're misreported by the accountant. So these are projects that I have to do with my staff to pick up this extra value. And by having another position available, it does allow me to do that more efficiently.
I guess a question that's sort of relevant to this is, where are we at with the software implementation for your department?
Sure, good question for that. We are really close to going live with our software right now.
Good.
There are, right now we have land, matches our land, all our attributes are in the system. There are some quirks with the personal property with the schedules and the items that are in each account that don't match right now, so they need to have that fixed prior to us going live. The goal is for us to actually start doing data entry in that system by the end of this month.
Perfect.
Yes.
Do we anticipate that the streamlining of that system will make everyone's tasks easier to the point where your existing staff will have more time, or will it not make enough of a difference in terms of time savings?
Well, you still have data entry, okay, like we have right now. Where it's going to save is in revaluations and for the statistical analysis that I have to do.
Sure.
Right now, I have to run multiple reports and double check those reports against other reports and then do an Excel spreadsheet to come out with where our equalized value should be and where our assessment ratios are. This system is automated. I mean, you plug it in, it's very, very accurate. It's a high-tech, mathematical system that allows us to do our job more efficiently for that purpose. Doing quicker revals. A revaluation like we just got done with, is a 1.5 year process. It's not an easy task because we're trying to be uniform with every property that exists in the city of Wausau. And we do things in mass. And that new system is going to be a big asset to the city of Wausau.
We have experienced, since 2016, when we reduced the department size, we have experienced a tremendous amount of urban growth. I mean, just in terms of commercial development and residential development, that was certainly not contemplated when we made the department smaller. So I can certainly understand the reason for the request.
And also, I'd like to point out that last year, in 2018, was a record new construction year.
Yeah.
I mean, it was $110 million that we added to the tax base in just new construction. And this year it was like 90 million, which is another big number. The economy in housing in Wausau is doing very, very well right now.
But someone needs to go out and capture all that value.
Exactly, and even the preliminary values of looking at sale prices right now compared to my new assessment that I just sent out to everyone, already projecting that the market's already went up 5%. So,
Wow.
Yeah, it's still on the move.
So, I guess in light of that, knowing now what we could have heard from Rick last night, but for the audio troubles, Now, this position, if you would decide to add this FTE, is just under 3 cents on the mill rate. And, I know that we had hedged on that when we held some other positions up, but, under the circumstances, given the fact that they may be able to reclaim enough value to offset much of the expense, what do you guys think, committee? Go ahead, Dawn, and then Mike, and then we'll check with Sarah.
I know when I did my numbers on this, how I wanted to track it, I was very much in favor of the full-time property appraiser, so I really support that.
It did score
We need
highly
that.
also in our rankings.
Yes, yes.
So, Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I also scored this very high, knowing that the assessment department that's the, from a business standpoint, the moneymaker for the city of Wausau. That's where we get our value, and if assessment can generate more value, the levy can go down.
Right.
So it's one of those things where I know it's, they've been, you just look at, I'm reading the request and the number of properties that they assessed in, it was 2020, 2019.
It's pretty intense.
It's a big number. It's a really big number. It almost doubled over 5 years, since we downsized the department. So I think it's reasonable that if housing is going to continue, and housing they did not stop building this year, even due to COVID. I mean, the apartments are going up on the riverfront. The apartments are going up over on the west side, so.
And new houses are too.
And there's new houses, there's new property development, or there's remodels. I mean, looking at the P&L, they're still generating lots of permits. So
Sure.
I'm in favor of
Building it in
reinstating.
and see where we end up.
Yeah.
Sarah, let's check in with Sarah. Sarah, what do you think on this one?
I also had scored it high on my initial evaluation, so I'm for adding this in, especially with the new information.
I am too, in light of what Rick's revealed. So why don't we request that Mary Ann build that one FTE into the budget? We'll reverse our decision on deferring that item.
One of the things Rick and I talked about today, so, historically, we've tried to add new positions mid-year to try to take a 2-year approach to stepping it into the budget.
Right.
This position, he'd really like to start right away because he has a vacancy, and, we had kind of talked that there is quite a long onboarding because, if they aren't already certified with the state, they have to get certified. And so it would be helpful from his department standpoint of, having 2 people to train at one time versus onboarding somebody, train them, and then have to go through the same regimen. So one of the things he and I talked about is, could we fund half of it with the levy in 2021, the other half carry over from, because he will have savings in his budget this year
For the
because of his
vacancy.
For the
vacancy.
current vacancy.
Sure.
And that would minimize the tax impact this year, but it still is allowing us to step into it over a 2-year period.
Sure. So we would fund it at half then,
Yes, but we would fill it
in January?
through his, right,
Sure.
through his
Or whenever the recruitment ends.
existing recruiting process, yes.
Okay. So exactly half? I mean, do we want to,
Sure.
okay. Which puts us at, where does that put us? You have your calculator on there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second.
38 and some change?
Yep, $38,640.
Okay, let's go 38,640 there then, which should give us just over a penny on the mill rate, right?
Yep. Right,
Mary Ann,
yeah.
would you explain that to me again, that we're going to fund half of it now and then
Right.
something in 2021? I want to make sure I'm clear on
So
that.
we'll fund half of it with levy in
Okay.
2021, and the other half in carryover, because he's going to have some savings from his
Okay.
position. And then in 2022, we would fund the whole thing from the levy. So you're just
Okay.
stepping into that levy over a 2-year period versus a 1-year.
And then just
period.
taking advantage of the opening that he hasn't filled for this year, because he's
Yeah.
not paying the full crew.
You know, and the other thing that I was concerned, and I knew that when I rated it high, it was because of the fact that I had read that after 5 years, somebody was leaving, after 3 years, somebody was leaving or something, or 18 months.
18 months, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it just blew my mind, because again, you want good people, if you're training them, we want them to stay here.
Right?
And we don't want them to leave, so, yeah, I was very much in favor of this, and I support this 100%.
Well, it's good. And, you know, that's one thing we talked about in some of the other departments too, is the last thing we want to do is invest time and resources into training people to be other people's fantastic employees when they move on. And then we've made the investment, but we can't retain the person.
Right.
So if this also then would better distribute the workload that you guys have and, you know, alleviate some of the pinch points there at certain times of the year when you guys are super busy, I think we could see it. So, all right, so that,
Thanks.
Thank you.
sure. Thanks for coming in. We need those clarifications. All right, so now is that that's the only, we wouldn't have levy impact on the West Side Master
Correct.
Plan for parks at all?
Right.
And so then where does that put us with our new mill rate
Articulate that for you.
by putting that back in? Are we just under 6 cents?
Yep. And one of the things I was going to mention too is, you know, the fire contract is going to be considered by the Common Council on October 27th, and our open enrollment for health insurance closes earlier than we have historically. So
Okay.
that information will be complete by October 29th, I believe, is the deadline.
Okay.
And so I was talking to our HR director, Tony, today, and we're going to try to get that information updated, because we might see a little bit of savings in those areas
Sure.
as well. So.
If we know who opted in for which benefit
Right.
plans or opted out or whatever,
Right.
that would help us fine tune that overhead a little bit.
So I won't have that available until November,
Okay.
but I still think it will help us get a more accurate, you know, understanding of what the impact is. And then, like I said, we still have the,
Manufacturing value.
yes. So, yeah, you're just a little over 6 cents.
Okay, all right, so let's figure 6 cents for our add-ons, and
Yep.
then once we know a little more about benefit plans and manufacturing values,
Revisit that.
we can certainly fine tune that then for our hearing on the 10th as well.
Yep. Yeah,
Because
I definitely would like to
our
have it
true
done by
impact may
then.
not be 6 cents.
Right.
You know, if we can find some savings to eat it up,
Yes.
that would help us tremendously. All right, and so then we had asked the departments to give us a little synopsis of where they're at with their 2020 budget in terms of unspent budget dollars and potential carryover, just so we kind of know roughly where we figure we're going to finish 2020 as we're trying to budget for 2021. Certainly not that we would repurpose the savings yet, because we're not finished with the year, first. Second, there's always unfinished work that requires carryover. So, but I guess if we can just get some quick updates.
Yep, and a presentation on their on the 2021.
Right, exactly, exactly. And so since Alder Ryan asked for that, and she is not with us this evening, however, is she on? Oh, she is on. Okay. Oh, yep, I see Deb is on now. Perfect. Yep, let me check. Deb, can you hear us here in the chamber? Is she muted? Can we unmute her? Okay, hold on, Deb, we're going to unmute you. Okay, Deb, can you hear us?
Can hear you.
I can hear you, so, perfect. Our sound issue is solved. And we're just to the point now where we're getting to the department updates, first about their, where they're finishing 2020 in terms of their budget and any surplus or savings, and second, just a little walkthrough of their 2021 budget. Let's see, and I guess we can start anywhere.
I think the attorney's office and HR are going to be the first two.
Okay, yep, that's fine, in any order. So if you want to come on up, Ann, and walk us through a little bit our start with the legal department, then we'll go to HR next.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Mary Ann will have to fill in a little bit for me here. Our budget is really rather simple because beyond the personnel expense, which is the lion's share, we don't have that many line items of anything that we can really reduce, and some things we have no control over that increase. But for our proposed 2021 budget, out of 12 categories or 12 line items that we changed, 10 of them we decreased. And one was an increase for a risk insurance premium of $97, and an increase of $225 for printing stipulations that we use in municipal court. So we're proud of it. It's not huge in relation to other departments, but it's a total decrease of $9,833 from 2020. Currently, our legal fee budget was $70,000, which is the next largest item beyond personnel costs. And we thought we were doing really well until about August, when, and Mary Ann can fill in for me, but because some expenses for outside counsel for development agreements for instance, were eligible TID expenses, and one TID, I think, closed or something happened and we had to shift it somewhere else, all of a sudden we were appearing to be over budget at the end of August when we thought we were going to do well through the end of the year and still have money left over. So a lot of it just depends on where you shift it through, but we will not be spending all those legal funds through the end of the year, and we've proposed a decrease for next year given the fact that we now don't have any tax challenges. Except for maybe a couple that'll get denied, or that were denied, but will not have any big box stores that we've typically had since 2008 coming forward. So that's going to be a huge change for us in the
It's fantastic.
litigation
It's been a long
category.
time since we've had that.
And we're down to 9 open pending cases now, many of which are sort of on hold or housekeeping and won't cost the city any money even if we aren't successful beyond the legal fees. So I think we're doing really well. I know our personnel budget's the largest, and I know the last council approved a third attorney position for us, for which I am extremely grateful. And I thank the council for that. I think our third attorney has turned out to be terrific, and I think it's going to go a long way toward succession planning in our office.
And
So
it
thank you
already
for
shows.
that.
I mean, it's obvious that he's been able to take some things off of your plate and Tara's plate to allow you guys to delve into, things that we would have previously had to outsource because you were just too busy, not for lack of skill, but just plain too busy.
It's
So-
really helped. It really
Yeah.
has, and I thank everybody.
Well, and the
Really, I'm
turnaround
very
time is better,
grateful for
too,
that.
so that's super
Good.
helpful.
Thank you.
Committee members, any questions for Ann about the legal budget? If not, we'll shift to the next department.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll bring up our HR director, Tony.
We're getting the easy budgets out of the way first. Much like Ann, the majority of my budget is in personnel costs. So I'm not expecting a ton of cost savings from this year to be carried over because we're fully staffed. But that said, one of the items that we will see some carryover likely in is the tuition reimbursement program. This year, council in the budget gave us $10,000 for a tuition reimbursement program, and that has been impacted a little bit by COVID. So we're probably going to see, I would estimate somewhere around $4,000 in savings from that program. It has still been well utilized, mostly by the fire department. But, because testing or classes just aren't as available, we'll see a little savings there.
Sure. Is your plan to carry that over, though, and offer additional training opportunities once things clear up? I mean,
My request is to fund it at the same level for next year.
Okay.
And if we're able to carry over the funds, I'm not sure if they'll be better utilized somewhere else, but at the very least, to start out with the same $10,000 for next year. Hopefully, the environment for schooling will be a little bit better next year, and also we can communicate it a little bit better when we're not dealing with COVID emergencies every moment of every day.
Right, yeah, so certainly, and that was one thing that we wanted to emphasize when we started to ramp up that budget a little bit, was to make sure that we have our people properly trained, and, that was an area that I would say maybe 6-7 years ago, we were sorely lacking in training and development, and it was, very obvious, because we lost a lot of institutional knowledge, and we had a lot of young folks or new folks trying to learn on the fly that didn't have 20 years of experience. and yet those training opportunities were not as plentiful, and we made some expensive mistakes. So I think making sure that we have that properly funded and that people are, getting that training when they need it or when they want it is, makes them better employees. So,
Definitely.
good stuff. Committee members, any questions for Tony about HR? Okay, and we'll bring up our next department. Do you have a list of what order they want to go in? We have no preference, so.
I think PD, you want to be next?
Okay, come on up.
Okay.
Deputy Chief Barnes is going to come up and talk to us about the police budget.
I'm gonna throw a lot of numbers around, so in lieu of anyone needing to take.
That's what we do here, so.
Maybe get you some copies.
Okay.
You already know all this information.
Thank you. Yes, we can definitely make sure that these handouts get in Deb's mailbox as well, and Sarah's virtual too tonight, so we'll make sure Sarah gets one as well.
Great, so, well, thank you for having us here tonight. The Wausau Police Department has a really interesting budget situation this year as a result of COVID, so I thought that was a great question. Currently, we're projecting, assuming there's no significant unknown expenses, a surplus of between $400,000 and $450,000 in our 2020 budget. But if we want to go start at the bottom of this page where it's COVID, it's listed, the reality is we don't know what our experience is going to be. We have what I would call a significant exposure to COVID with officers and staff coming down positive in the quarantining. In order to staff, we need to pay overtime to do that right now, given our current situation. So as much as I would love to be able to tell you, here's going to be $400,000 or $450,000, we're kind of crossing our fingers that that's the case as we see what happens through the rest of the year. With that being said, as we look toward 2021, we're looking at a 4.3% increase in our operational budget. You can see that the budget is broke down into three areas, personnel representing just under 89% of a $10,482,000 budget. So the vast majority of our expense, like most departments in the city, is labor and our staff, which represents about 90 full-time employees as well as community service officer and some part-time staff. 7.9 or 8% of our budget, representing $912,000, is projected to be for contractual services. We have a little bit of flexibility with that, and we move some things around in order to make some staffing adjustments for next year. But the reality is, as we went through an exercise to look at how could we cut that and police cheaper, the reality is we are pretty thin right now, and the expenses associated with running the department are significant. Lastly, supplies and expenses, which just represent those things that we have to have, our building, office supplies, firearms, training, our SWAT teams, represent about $209,000. So that's the totality of our 2021 budget. There's very little new spending in there. The spending that we do have in there just represents maintaining the status quo without much new activity.
Some of this figure does include, though, the ramp up on the CSO program for the event staff, right? Assuming, because we did approve half of that last night.
Yeah, my understanding is that the $10,482,000 does not include those additional expenses.
Okay.
Because that budget figure comes from the budget that was presented to you, and that
And
did
they
not
weren't in there? Okay.
Marion, would I be stating that correctly, that the document that you forwarded me today that I looked at would not represent the additional add-ons from last night?
Okay.
So that won't be in there. And then lastly, I just want to circle back to COVID, that it's been significant for us. The reason we have a $400,000 anticipated surplus is because there are services we didn't provide when we were on a COVID schedule. We had little to no overtime expenses because we weren't performing some services. There were things we didn't do we've had a reduction in some of the self-initiated activity from our officers because we want them to social distance from people, and how we're actually policing has changed. So COVID's been significant to us as we try and maintain law and order in this community while also protecting our staff and the community from our staff in regards to COVID. So those are some of the issues we've dealt with. At this point, we don't anticipate going to any other reductions. Because of the surplus that we have there, we're going to utilize an overtime strategy to be able to cover those vacancies throughout the rest of the year.
Excellent. Well, and we do know that sometimes when we think we're ahead on the budget, it just takes, one good crime and a huge investigation to use it all up, and we found that out in past years. So, good to know. Does anyone have questions for Deputy Chief Barnes about the police budget? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Let's see.
You want to go next,
You
Eric?
want to do public, we can do Public Works next. We'll bring up Public Works Director Eric Lindman.
Good evening, thanks. So within Public Works, I guess starting out with the 2020 budget, we have, we're pretty much right on track with what we budgeted for the year. We've got some non-street work areas and stuff like that at this point in time that are a little bit below anticipated, but we don't foresee any significant savings. That being said, we're still just getting into snow season, so depending, that's typically where we will see our savings if we have. The spring was pretty good to us, so we did fairly well January through April, but we'll see what November and December brings to us before the end of the year. So if that is anything similar to spring, we may have some funds to remaining at the end of the year. Like with the special events, we set those up, but typically that is just personnel costs for us. And so if they aren't doing that, we have them out doing other work. So we didn't, as far as COVID-related items, we didn't see any significant savings or anything from personnel. We made a decision early on in February. Either we were going to scale back on projects or we were going to move full speed ahead with all of them. And we made the determination to just push through with all of the projects for the year that we were doing. So it turned out what I feel is to be a good decision, and we got a lot done this year. We're wrapping it up now, so that would be in 2020. In 2021, we made some shifts. I think I've spoken with some of you as well as CISM committee members in the council as far as our operations down at streets. We kind of backed off on doing crack sealing in-house, doing that contracted out, and then doing a lot more hot mix and paving, to try to get ahead of all of our cold mix and our patching throughout the winter on the same streets and the same blocks of streets that we're doing. So we really moved into that. We increased that budget quite a bit this year, and we proposed that an increase in the budget for next year as well. And then hopefully with any winter savings that we might have moving into 21, we'd be able to allocate some of that to the hot mix budget, and we could do a lot more hot mix and paving throughout the city in-house. Our capital budgets went up. Our operating budget, though, for the most part, it went up slightly, but it was pretty flat, I think, Mary Ann, is that correct?
Yep.
The total. And so we tried to keep it as steady as we could. I think really the majority was just the personnel and staffing. We've had some retirements. In 2020, we've had some vacancies in the mechanics side, struggling to hire mechanics. So we will see savings there, but hopefully we will become fully staffed here soon. So.
Sure. Okay. Anybody have questions for Eric on Public Works Department at all? Deb, I see your hand up if you want to go ahead and ask.
Yes, I was hoping, Eric, on the CISM side for the street projects for next year, are all the streets going to be reconstructed so that the lead lateral will be part of the planned construction for each of those streets?
Yes, all utilities, water, sewer, and storm sewer will be replaced along with the laterals. And then on the private side, for the lead laterals that you're talking about, Deb, the homeowners will have the opportunity to, as long as we have grant funds, to apply for those or to do that on their own if we don't get the grant funds.
Okay, it just happened, I had a plumber come and do some faucet work for me yesterday, and he was saying he had talked to a homeowner that wanted to do the lead lateral, but she was on a street that was not planned for construction, and so I guess I'm just hoping on budget and on SISM that we try to focus on streets that have not been upgraded, so that we can try to replace as many lead laterals in the city as we can, though we're never going to be able to do as many as we want. But thank you, Eric.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, anyone else have questions for Eric about DPW?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mike.
So I think you mentioned that, for snow removal, the first half of this year, we were kind of about average. So we're kind of, do you feel we're tracking right on course? So if we have a normal November, December, we should be okay?
Yeah, I think we're about 52% expended so far on our winter
Okay.
maintenance budget. And so, if there's a normal, typical snow events that we have and nothing too extravagant, I think we're going to be okay.
Well, 52% for 2 months sounds, yeah, that sounds pretty decent, so.
I'm optimistic, Michael.
Yeah, we all have to be. We need a silver lining somewhere.
That's right, that's
Yep.
right. We need to maybe hope that last night's snow was it for a while, and
Yes.
maybe it'll hold off and things can warm up again, so, good stuff. Anyone else have anything? If not, we can move to the next department.
Thank you.
Let's see here, and we've got, let's
Rick,
see.
I don't know if Rick wanted to, do you want to say anything, or were you going to talk tomorrow night?
If
Okay.
we have Rick, we can go through assessment right away. And then,
I will bring it
yep,
through.
and then we should
And then
have
I don't know.
fire and parks left.
Yeah, yep.
Okay?
Hello. For the 2020 remaining budget, it's going to be a very minimal savings that we're going to have left over, roughly about $2,500. That's due to meals and lodging that we didn't have to do this year because of COVID. And also, we have about 2 to 3 months of vacancy for one property appraiser position that's currently vacant yet. Moving forward into 2021, there's only one increase to my budget compared to all my other years, and that is for services for Marshall and Swift valuation service. We are buying 2 licenses within the department for staff, so we have the ability to track sales that are listed and all the other realtor information that we'll be able to capture about a home that we have to report to the Department of Revenue. So
Perfect.
that's
Okay, well, and
it.
if we come out close, that means we did it right last year, so that's good. Anyone have questions for Rick about the assessments budget? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you for that update. Let's see here.
Jamie, you want to give a presentation? I texted, or
yep, we've
emailed
got-
her, but I,
We've got Jamie on WebEx. Jamie, can you walk us through a little bit for where you guys are going to come out for the end of this year and kind of what you're looking at in terms of overall increase for next year?
Yes, looking at our 2020 budget and kind of where we're at right now, we should have a significant cost savings. We're looking at probably about $400,000 roughly when I go through the numbers right now as to what we'll be saving, and that it does not include that 110 that were saved from the pools that got put towards the playground. So we were roughly around 500,000 if I'm doing my math correctly, knowing what we still have coming for personnel costs yet this year. And so we still had some revenues, which were really nice for shelter reservations, even though most of the events got canceled. And we had a very good Sylvan Tubing Hill last year before all COVID hit. So that we got to meet our revenues there, which helped our budget bottom line. Now, then we had significant cost savings in labor over the summer with seasonal staffs that we did not hire. The pools were one that we saved, also some summer field and park staff, and we are also which is cost savings to the city and the county. I'm down 2 full-time staff that once those 2 people, we had one person leave and another person move up into that position, so that remained vacant, as well as one position that retired, and we kept it vacant that we'll be looking to fill next year. So those were significant cost savings this year. Looking at 2021, mainly our budget increases are just personnel as well. We worked in a cost of living increase that was given to us by the county administrator of 2.3% for our staff. And as you know, most of our staff are split, and not all of them are 50-50, but they're split between the county and the city. And then also we did a part-time wage adjustment last February to allow us to be competitive with the local businesses such as McDonald's and Menards. That wasn't recognized in the 2020 budget, but we need to recognize it in the 2021 budget. So we had a slight, our budget is slightly increased at 3.14% over last year. This year was really hard for us because a lot of our budget is on revenue from those users, and not really knowing what is going to happen this next year. We were a little bit conservative, but hopeful that we're going to be close to normal in 2021. But if not, we'll adjust our personnel just like we did this year and other things to make sure that we stay proportionate on our revenues and expenditures.
Okay. Committee members, any questions for Jamie on the parks budget? Okay. If not, we'll place that on file. Thanks, Jamie, for that.
I can do mine.
Okay, yep, let's go through the finance department.
Okay, so we also don't expect that we're going to have a lot of savings because of COVID. We actually had an extremely busy year in the office. With the elections, of course, we came for a budget modification to offset some of the increase that we've had because of the increase in absentee voting and the drive-through voting. We also spent a lot of time with licensing this year because we were giving refunds, and that created more work. And really, we were pretty busy all throughout the Safer at Home, taking payments in the Dropbox and things like that. So one of the areas that people have talked about is training and savings there. We did take advantage of a lot of the virtual training that was being offered in 2020, and we were actually able to attend training that typically we wouldn't go to because it's, a long distance, and, the hotel and travel costs would be too expensive. So we really tried to double down on our training, and, a number of us, because of our certification, have training requirements for our licensing. So we did take advantage of training whenever possible. For 2021, we have actual small decline in our budget. Our budget is 61% personnel costs. The next major component is contractual services, which is about just shy of $350,000. Some of the things that we pay out of our contractual services budget would be our annual audit, all of our banking fees, the telephone service that we have, also the City Hall maintenance is included in our budget, so all of the utilities, that's about $108,000 is the utilities, snow removal, some repairs and maintenance. So, that takes most of our contractual service. Supplies and expenses, ordering the tax bill, having those printed, having them mailed out. So, yeah, besides those things, generally speaking, like I said, we had a small decrease, a 0.5% decrease in our budget from 2020. So it's a pretty stable budget.
Does anyone have questions on the finance budget for Mary Ann? And with regard to facilities, I assume that at least in carryover, we'll have the project that we still have going on that I assume we're starting after the election to fortify the clerk's office with the glass.
Yes, that has been ongoing. Yep,
Okay.
actually, the glass is supposed to come before the election.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I
next
wondered if
week.
you'd want to be under construction
I
when
know.
everyone is coming. So good that they're getting it done, though.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
okay, that's huge.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. The next department we have in our book is the fire department.
Yep.
We've got Chief Gujawa on with us.
I think Tracy
Or-
said she was going to
or she
actually
can have-
give her presentation tomorrow. Is
Okay.
that right, Tracy?
Totally fine.
Oh, I see she,
Yeah, that's fine, unless you don't want to have a meeting tomorrow, I can certainly move through it right now. It's up to the committee. I'd be more than happy to do whatever.
Well, I think we probably, are we going to need a quick meeting tomorrow anyway to walk through our final product?
Yep.
So we'll be here either way. So if you'd rather do it tomorrow, that's completely fine.
Okay, well, I was planning on coming in person tomorrow, so
Okay.
I'll do that.
Okay, we'll hold yours then for tomorrow and we'll see you then.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
And, let's see, did we miss any? I think,
no. CCITC, it'll be tomorrow also.
Yep,
And Greg Soibert is going
and
to be
Metro
tomorrow.
Ride tomorrow
Yep.
as well?
Yep.
Okay. And
Don't need that.
airport's an enterprise fund and that we've got, I mean, that kind of speaks for itself. So I don't know that we need to bring John in.
Okay.
But that would conclude our department updates. Anything else that we need to delve into in terms of the budget book, relevant to our tax increment districts or anything that, before we get to the end of our product? I think we did go through a lot of that in your PowerPoint.
Yep.
Okay. And you were also going to create an information piece to go along with this for our committee members, two of whom are new, to make sure that we have, get some information out there about just the basics of tax increment financing, increment taxation, joint review board, how that stuff all kind of works together.
Yep. And we did a agenda amendment
Okay?
right before this meeting so that
tomorrow.
it's on tomorrow's agenda. Yes.
Yes, so that's one thing I want to get that out too for our two members that are attending virtually. Normally, either shortly after our council retreat or in connection therewith, we often, when we seat a new council, do a little training called TID 101 that actually helps us learn about and understand how tax increment districts get formed, how they work, how they can spend their money, where they can spend their money, what type of reporting we do on those, where we are at in terms of our TID capacity versus the amount of property we have in TIDs. And we haven't had a chance yet to do a lot of training on that, and a significant part of our budget is tax increment districts, so including components of our mall project. So I've asked Marianne to put together a little information piece that she can circulate out to the committee members or to the entire council, because I think they can all benefit from that piece. And certainly then they can circle back with her with questions if there's anything we missed tomorrow. But we want to just walk through that, and if anybody has any questions from an educational standpoint about how any of this stuff works, it's a complex topic. There's a lot of legalese involved, and I'll tell you that there is no dumb question. So, I want you guys to feel comfortable to ask her any question you need an answer to. I don't expect you to try to meet with her one-on-one all individually and as part of the pandemic. So, given that, if you think of any questions that you need to know a little more about to absorb all of this TID and TIF language that we use so commonly, jot down your questions and bring them tomorrow night. And the materials she brings us may cover that, but we'll walk through your questions as well. Okay, we've got a question from Alder Ryan. Go ahead, Deb.
All right, Lisa, you can hear me?
We can hear you. Yay.
Okay, great. I was going to mention about the videography and some of that from the other night that I wasn't able to connect with you guys on. But is there somehow within the budget that for public access that we could go ahead and plan on, or at least get estimates on what the cost would be to make sure to videotape as well the other commission meetings that have not been done on a regular basis?
Certainly, and I think that's always been our goal, is to do as much of that as we possibly can. We do still have some commissions and boards that don't meet in this room, which is where videography is really easy because we have the equipment and the sound system. So, I'm on a couple myself that, either meet in the boardroom, airport meets at the airport. I mean, there's a lot of things that don't meet where they're easily taped, but there's some things that could. And so that's certainly something we can take a look at as well. to see what it would cost us to do a little more of that. I think the public really appreciates it. More people watch that than we ever thought would. You know, when we first started, 5 years ago, we started to put all standing committees on, and I think more people, I mean, we even watch them now. If you miss a meeting, you can go back and watch the video, which we didn't have that luxury before, and it's a lot easier than trying to decipher the written minutes sometimes. So definitely, we'll get those numbers together. Anything else that anyone has questions on for tonight? If not, yes? Absolutely. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. So I wanted to let anybody who's going to be joining virtually tomorrow know that the Community Development Department has a meeting at 4:30 in here right before that. It's our public hearing and working session for some CARES funding we're receiving. I don't know how long it will go, so if you're trying to join the meeting and it hasn't started yet, just know that I will start it and we will start on time, but it may not be started as early as you're used to.
Okay, thank you for that update, because tomorrow we are starting at 6.
Yep.
We've had different times for different workshops, so 6 o'clock tomorrow. If they run over a little bit, we'll just hold until they're done, and just start a few minutes after if we have to. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn for tonight. Motion by Herbst, is there a second? Second by Martins. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We'll stand adjourned, and then we'll reconvene tomorrow night, and we'll be a little closer to our finished product. So thanks, everyone.